Hey, darlings. In a comfortable paid ward, an elderly, gray-haired man lay under 4 drips, his face contorted in pain. The door opened and his daughter, EKATERINA, entered. A 35-year-old woman with an attractive appearance and body, always well-groomed and fashionably dressed. But her red eyes gave it away. It was clear that she was crying and hadn't slept enough. She placed the package near the bedside table, sat on the edge of the bed, kissed her father on the cheek, and asked sympathetically, "Good morning, Daddy. How are you today? Is it at least a little easier? I'm so worried about you." This disease has not only tormented him for so many years, but it is also a stomach problem. Some kind of attack. I talked to the doctor yesterday. He told me to maintain a strict diet, so I brought everything on the list: oatmeal with water and steamed vegetables. Still no meat. The man's face immediately lit up when he saw his daughter. It seemed that even the pain had subsided, and he replied, "Thank you, sunshine, for worrying. You're the only one left with me. The light is in the window. I still don't feel like eating. Maybe later. Okay, they'll treat me. I'll run some more. Would you rather tell me how things are going at the bank? What is Talik saying? Did he fulfill the agreement as I asked? How are you doing?" Katia began to report the situation. "Don't worry, Talik is always at work. He's almost never at home. Or he has reports, or business meetings, or anything else. He grumbles about everything that he can't be officially appointed director of the bank. He doesn't like it, that he is by proxy. I'm also excited. In a few weeks, I'm going on a business trip to negotiate the supply of CT scanners. It's okay, Daddy, if you get better quickly, and overall it will be wonderful." Vladimir Ivanovich stroked his daughter's hand and said, "It doesn't matter. Don't let my son-in-law run in front of the locomotive. It's too early to discard me. He is already in charge of everything. The time will come when he will become director. And the fact that you barely see each other is bad. I will die like this, but I will not wait for my grandchildren. We better hurry with this question. Our time is already running out, daughter. After Lida's death, I raised you, lived for you, and was so happy to have you. A child is a gift from destiny, for life." Katia didn't like these conversations. What's the point of pounding water in a mortar? She herself understood that it was time to give birth to a baby. But if everything were so simple, then the woman hurried to change the subject, persuaded her father to eat a few spoons of porridge, and ran off to work. And along the way I went over my childhood, my youth, my relationship with Talik, and I tried to understand why lately they had become completely strangers. Katia's father was a well-known bank owner in the city. Mom died very early. The girl was only 3 years old. He barely remembered her. He just looked at the huge portrait on the wall of his father's room and imagined what she was like, how he loved her. Her father never married again, and for this Katia was very grateful to him. She never wanted to see someone else's wife in the house, much less call her mother. Dad, of course, had a personal life, but it never came to marriage. As he himself admitted more than once, he never met anyone like his beloved Ladaka. He loved his wife very much and carefully kept her memories in his soul throughout all these years. Even her room remained untouched in the mansion. Servants were not allowed to enter there. Dad or Katia cleaned up themselves. Everything there remained as it was when my mother was alive. The robe hanging on the chair, as if she had left for a minute, her favorite perfumes and cosmetics were on the bedside table. My father often went there and sat there for a long time, sighing heavily and remembering how happy he and Lita were. Katia studied well, pleased her father with her successes, and graduated from university with honors. He had an entrepreneurial spirit since he was a child. Already in high school, I was able to earn good money by writing tests or exam cheat sheets for my classmates. Her father tried not to spoil her. Although there was every possibility for this, it was important for him that Katia herself learned to follow her path in life and, of course, got married successfully. Vladimir Ivanovich tried several times to invite potential matchmakers with his children to his house for dinner, those whom he himself would like to see as Katia's companions. But the girl had character and didn't want such a relationship. She deliberately ruined the night and ran away. Katia read women's novels and sincerely believed that she herself would feel when she met the one who was destined for her. After university, Katia, with her father's help, opened her own small business, selling and installing medical equipment. She often went on business trips, and on one of them, in a small resort town, she met her future husband Talik. He was not rich at all. He worked as a simple manager in a clinic where she brought ultrasound devices. The guy continually praised and courted him with such assertiveness and confidence, as if he knew for sure that Katia would not resist. He managed to surprise her without having much money. I had an amazing picnic in nature and then caught a breeze on a speedboat along the river. Everything was so easy and romantic, and Katia swam and completely fell in love with Anatoly. The groom agreed to the move easily, mainly because she already had an apartment and her father helped. I soon met my father-in-law. Talik seemed to Vladimir Ivanovich to be a good, simple, and intelligent guy, and he decided to gradually introduce him into his business, teach him how to bank, so that later, in old age, he could hand over all the business. Who would refuse such a prospect? Talik was happy and at first very grateful to his father-in-law, and generally satisfied with a well-fed and comfortable life. And he was not lazy at work. He tried and succeeded. The couple had a magnificent wedding. The press and photographers were present. Talik proudly hugged the bride around the waist and did not let go for a second. The girl was happy. Everything came true as she dreamed. She loved Talik so much, and he blew dust particles from her. Everything seemed like a fairy tale. In the first years this continued, Talik plunged headlong into business, absorbing knowledge like a sponge and adopting the experience of his father-in-law, and did not forget about his wife. They often went on vacation together. He ran home from work as quickly as possible. For your Katia? After all, in fact, he was directly indebted to her for everything he had. But, as you know, everything gets boring, and after 5 years Talik began to change. He felt like he was the master of his life. It seemed to him that he was and would always be like that. The passions between the spouses had cooled down. Both were businessmen. The whole day was scheduled to the minute. And when they met late at night, during dinner, they increasingly discussed the current situation at work. For a long time, no one called anyone affectionately. Everything followed the beaten path. At first, Katia herself did not want children. She thought that there was no need to rush, and until the age of 30 she calmly took precautions. But then I started to wonder, why exactly do they live together with their husband? They snort, try, make money. All my friends had children a long time ago, and no longer small ones, and Katia decided that it was time for her and Talik to have children. But just deciding is one thing. But giving birth to a child is completely different. Yes, and my father began to suffer a lot in recent years. His condition slowly worsened. His joints hurt a lot, making his movements difficult. Periodically, he was treated in the hospital department. Relief seemed to come, but not for long. It was at this time that Katia also became pregnant, but amidst a lot of stress and anxiety, unfortunately, there was a breakdown. The deadline was very short. The couple decided that nothing would happen. But after this incident, Katia was unable to get pregnant again, and this depressed her very much. The relationship with my husband has been very difficult lately. It's as if they are reluctant to communicate. The husband was indignant at how long he would have to work under a power of attorney. He really wanted to become a full director of the bank, and the father was getting worse. It seemed like all of his chronic illnesses had gotten worse and decided to attack his entire body at once. Katia heard several rumors behind her back several times that Talik was going for a walk. Both the secretary and the accountant hinted at this more than once, but the woman did not believe it. There were no obvious signs of cheating, But the fact that their relationship went wrong, all families go through periods of crisis, you just have to get over it. She arrived home in the evening much later than her husband had accumulated a lot of things. He tried frying eggs, but almost burned the pan. He threw it in the sink and shouted, "Katerina, well, where are you going? Your beloved husband arrived hungry and had a ball in the fridge. How long will you live this lifestyle? I'm tired of all this. Maybe it's time to take care of the house and not spend days in your office." I also found a businesswoman. The woman was offended, opened the window wide, waved a towel so that the child quickly disappeared, and also began to be indignant. "Good night to you too, dear. You're not a child, and it's not my fault you can't handle scrambled eggs without starting a fire. I could order dinner at a restaurant, and the refrigerator is not at all empty. There is soup and cutlets. They could be heated. And I'm not to blame for my work. I like it, and I'm not going to give it up. You're also out of the house all day. So what? I have to be alone within four walls. If we're going to change something in life, then it's something radical for both of us. You could at least ask, how is my day? How is my father feeling? There will be dinner for you. Wait half an hour." She frowned and started cutting vegetables for the salad and heating the chops. The husband sat at the table and tried to alleviate the situation. "Well, I'm sorry, Katyusha. I'm wrong. It was such a difficult day. Everything is getting out of hand. And then I forgot to add oil to the pan. Everything started to smoke." Then he exploded. "How is Vladimir Ivanovich? Did you visit him today? What do the doctors say? Let me help you with something?" The woman did not know how to stay angry for long, kissed her husband, and replied, "No, I do it myself. Better open the wine. Let's drink some. We both need to relax a little. These are difficult times. Dad barely improves. Even though the doctors are doing everything they can, he has already lost 10 kilos with these diets. He can't eat anything. And now I need to go on a business trip. It's a good deal, but I still don't know what to do with Dad. You're at the bank all the time, and you have to check on Dad every day. He needs attention, you know?" Talik immediately became cheerful. His mood improved, and he began to reassure his wife. "Well, why are you making a monster out of me? Go when you need to, and don't worry about anything. I will regularly go to my father-in-law and support him. Everything's going to be okay. Darling, I'm nearby." They ate heartily, watched a romantic film, and the rest of the night passed in peace. But Katya's soul was still restless. She had known Talik for many years and realized that he was very happy about her departure. It was not without reason. But work is work. She told her father that she was leaving for a short time. He understood everything and blessed his daughter. In front of her, he tried to cheer up. He didn't want to upset the child, but in fact he was tormented by terrible pain. And my heart also tightened, sometimes not letting me breathe at all. Katya had been driving for many years, drove confidently, and was not afraid to drive alone, even over long distances. The route was standard and had been tried many times. She always dodged the usual multi-kilometer traffic jam through the village of Kashki. But the weather had completely deteriorated. The rain was falling like buckets, the wind and cold were intense, and the rural road was completely destroyed. On the next hill, the car suddenly swerved towards the edge. There was a thud against something hard, and the tire pressure gauge rang sharply. "That's bad luck. I think the tire broke." But that wasn't enough. "I also recently put the spare tire on when transporting equipment, but I never put it back on. Judging by the navigator, it's a few kilometers walk to the village. And not a soul of people. Everything is one for one." Katya put on the hood of her coat and got out of the car. Indeed, the tire was flat and the disc was bent. She looked into the distance, trying to see through the veil of rain at least some buildings or lights. But luckily nothing was visible. The woman tried to call a tow truck, but the call was floating and they couldn't hear her. They couldn't understand what she was saying. Katya sat in the hall for an hour. not knowing what to do. It was completely dark outside, and then she finally heard the sound of an engine. A tractor was passing along the road. She jumped out of the car and started waving her arms, trying to get the driver's attention and praying he would notice her and stop. Finally, the tractor slowed down and a broad-shouldered young man got out of the cab. "Good night. What happened to you? Something wrong with your car?" Katia replied with annoyance. "Hello. Yes, that's the problem with the wheel. There is no spare tire and I can't talk to anyone. I can't even call a tow truck. What to do? I cannot imagine. It's scary to spend the night here." The guy carefully examined the damage and said, Things are bad, of course. You know what? Do you see the fence there? There is a hangar nearby where fertilizers are stored and kept. Let's leave your equipment there, and in the morning I'll go to the tire shop and ask the guys for help. And here's what we'll do to you. Come into my cabin." Fear and excitement were visible in the wet woman's eyes. "Don't be afraid. I'm Grishka, the tractor driver. Every dog here knows me, no matter who you ask. I will take you to the village to see Baba Varya. She will take you to stay. This is my neighbor. A good, kind woman will not refuse." Katia didn't know how to thank this nice guy. "Thank you, Grisha. Oh, my name is Katia, and I'm very desperate here. Maybe there will be better communication in the village, and I'll pay for the night. It's very scary to spend the night alone on the road. This is the first time such force majeure has happened to me." The guy took her to a small house, knocked on the window, explained the situation to the somewhat deaf and wrinkled grandmother, who immediately nodded and waved for Katia to come in. "Come in, dear. Don't be afraid of the dog. The animal, like me, is old and doesn't bite. Oh, you're completely wet. Now I'm going to give you a warm flannel robe. Go change. And let's dry things on the stove overnight." Katia thanked Varvara Sergeyevna and went to change clothes in the small bedroom. There was a baby sleeping in a crib, no more than 3 years old. During his sleep, he coughed violently and breathed through his mouth all the time. His nose was blocked. It was clear to the naked eye that the child was sick. Katia asked worriedly, "Varvara Sergeyevna, is this your grandson? The boy is coughing a lot. He has a fever." I touched his forehead. "He's all hot. Did you call a doctor? How are you treating your child?" The old woman sighed heavily. "Where do we get a doctor from? The paramedic station is under repair. I myself know that Vasenka needs to be taken to the city. But I'm 80 years old. I can't use my legs anymore. I don't know if I'll get there. I cry day and night. In front of the images I pray for my grandson's health. I prepare herbs for him." Katia was surprised. "Where are Vazhya's parents? Why are you creating it alone? Do they really care what happens to their child?" The old woman looked completely dejected. "It's a long story, but I'll tell you if you want. While you eat barley porridge, I'm sleepy. My Fedenka and I lived our whole lives in perfect harmony. We worked on the farm, but God did not give us children. We waited and then stopped. The daughter appeared when we thought everything was over. All the villagers twisted their fingers at their temples, saying, 'You are crazy. Varvara survived. She decided to give birth to a baby in old age.' They didn't understand what it was like to wait and pray all their lives for his appearance. And then what? Kill or what? In general, we took a risk, did not listen to anyone, and gave birth to a daughter. Everything would be fine, but Alachka had a weak heart from childhood. Whether because I gave birth to her so late, or why else, I don't know. My husband, Fedya, died early. My daughter, Alachka, was only 5 years old. That's how I created it myself. She loved her very much, took care of her, and did not burden her with too much work. After school, Alla went to work in the city. She did not want to stay in the village. She believed that there were no prospects here. She got a job as a waitress in a cafe, called often, said that everything was fine, that she had found a fiancé in the city. It's true that she warned him that he was much older than her, but that he really loved her. I was even happy. I thought that if he is older, then he is responsible and not a stupid young man. I kept hoping that Allah would soon invite me to the wedding. And 3 years later my daughter came back, alone and with her belly higher than her nose. She fell at his feet, cried. Her fiancé, the bastard, abandoned her. He ended up being married, of course. Why would he have a child on the side? He forced her to have an abortion and they fought. But she did not dare to carry the sin in her soul, to get rid of the child, and she endured it until the end. I, of course, forgave her, accepted her, my bloodthirsty beloved, after all. But my Allah didn't survive the birth. She died right there. Her heart couldn't take it. How I suffered, how I was killed. They wanted to take my grandson to the shelter. They say, I'm already old, but I didn't care. I fought Vajja. I get up on my own, but every year it becomes more and more difficult for me. I can barely drag my legs. The pressure is on me. My joints are twisting. I've become half deaf. My vision is bad. I understand that I will not have time to raise my granddaughter. My time has expired, and that is why my heart hurts so much. They're going to put the little boy in an orphanage. What is it like in government fields? Not good. I feel sorry for him. I have no strength. Tomorrow I'll ask my neighbor to take Grisha. It's a long bus ride. I need to show my grandson to the doctor. Otherwise, the poor guy will start coughing. Katia shook her head and wiped away the tears that appeared. The story of this poor grandmother touched her to the depths of her soul, and she felt very sorry for the boy. She offered to help her. You don't need to ask anyone. Grisha will fix the tire on my car tomorrow, and I will take you and my grandson myself. I work at the clinic. I know all the doctors. I will take you to the best pediatrician. The boy will definitely get help there. And I'm going to cancel the business trip, because this way, human life is more important. The old woman even started to cry, wiped her tears with the end of a handkerchief and thanked. Thank you, my dear. You won't find such nice people these days during the day. I will pray for you. Look how beautiful my Allah was. She took after her father. Chernobrova, eyes like saucers. All the men in the village sighed when they looked at her. I didn't save my girl. I miss her so much. Katia looked at the framed photo and gasped. A young and very beautiful black-haired girl was photographed there. She was radiant and her eyes sparkled with happiness. And Talik hugged her. Katia's husband. There could be no mistake. The woman asked, astonished, "Who is this next to my daughter? In the photo?" Varvara Sergeyevna replied sharply. So this is the same bastard. Cowardly groom. Father Vajja. Curse you. At first I wanted to cut it out of the photo, but then I didn't. I decided that if I die, maybe my father's granddaughter would want to find him. You never know. Anything can happen. Katia even felt sick, apologized and went out, exposed her face to the pouring rain and rubbed her face. She couldn't believe everything. It turns out that Vajja is Talik's son, and Talik himself has long betrayed her. No wonder there were rumors. People didn't lie, and she, like an idiot, didn't believe it. Poor baby. What a terrible fate awaits him. Grandma is very old. There is no one left. The scoundrel's father doesn't need him. It turns out it's just an orphanage? Well, I do not. The decision came instantly, like lightning. Katia returned home, sat down next to her grandmother, took her dry, wrinkled hand, like a chicken paw, in hers and began to say, Varvara Sergeyevna, what I'm going to tell you now is hard to believe. And yet, that bastard in the photo is not only your late daughter's fiancé, but also my husband. It's still hard for me to realize this, but it's true. We have been together for many years. I myself still cannot believe that Talik could act so vilely and deceive me, betray me and ruin his daughter. Apparently destiny itself brought me to your house, you know? Vajja is no stranger to me. He's my worthless husband's son. and I won't leave him. I won't leave him in trouble. I'm going to help the boy recover, and I want to adopt him. Won't you care? I have a job in my own apartment, and my father owns a bank. The child will not need anything." The elderly woman looked at her dumbfounded, as if she were crazy, and stammered, "How can this be? Oh Lord, Jesus, forgive my daughter and me, for God's sake. Do you really want to adopt your lover's child? Somehow I can't believe it. It's your husband? If he abandoned my pregnant daughter and did not want to be involved with the child, he is unlikely to accept Vasenka now. It's kind of scary." Katia responded passionately. "It doesn't matter. I already decided everything myself. I will divorce my husband and I will raise Vajja alone. I will raise him like a son. I will love you and I will not leave you. I have been dreaming of a baby for years. I cannot give birth alone. But here fate itself gives me a chance to become Vajja's mother. Think about it. Now let's go to sleep. I'm so tired." The next day, Grisha helped fix the wheel. Katia picked up Vajja and grandmother Varya and took them to the clinic. The baby was lethargic, refused to eat, and napped all the time. Somehow he immediately went into Katia's arms, as if he had known her for a long time, and she gradually examined the boy. How similar he is to Talik, the same appearance and pointy nose, brown hair, and the same shaped ears. She could not stand it, and while Varvara Sergeevna was collecting documents and other things, she managed to talk to her husband. In the village the connection was a little better. After his wife left, Anatoly immediately arranged a rest for himself, amused himself with just one more young passion, lay down with her in bed and whispered kindnesses in her ear, kissing her delicate neck. When the phone rang, it was my wife. Talik gently pushed his lover away from him and reluctantly took the phone. What Katia said to him shocked him. "Good morning, my love. My plans have changed. My business trip has been canceled. It takes a long time to explain, but I am taking a small child and his grandmother for treatment in the city. The baby is so cute that he was left alone. His mother died during childbirth. His father abandoned him before birth. And my grandmother is already 80 years old. She can't get up on her own. I was thinking, are we going to adopt him? Let's give Vasenka a happy childhood. I feel sorry for him." Talik immediately jumped up, as if doused with cold water. The romantic mood disappeared, and he shouted in a voice that was not his own. "Katerina, have you gone completely crazy there? Are you okay with your head? I am categorically against it, and will not lift someone else's weight. Don't you dare do that, or we no longer have a family." The woman deliberately did not tell him the whole truth. She wanted to hear what he had to say and was convinced that nothing else could connect her to this man. He doesn't need his own or other people's children. Katia exhaled and answered harshly, "As you know, no family means no. I won't change my decision. I'm going to take the baby to the hospital and come home. We'll talk." Talik threw the phone to the floor in anger and shouted to his lover, "Well, why did you lie down? Come on, get dressed and get out of here. There's no time for you now. How tired you all are for me." What goes on in their women's heads, the devil can't find out. The offended girl left, cursing her rude lover with the last words. But Talik didn't care. He was already dialing the admaster's number. "Hello, I need to change the locks urgently. Write down the address. I'll pay double and get my hands on it immediately." He decided that he would never let Katia and someone else's child into the apartment. He was so angry that he decided to get a divorce and sue. He muttered under his breath, "Well, wait, you sentimental idiot. You still don't know who you're going to bump into. Look what you thought, you freak, dragging a little boy here, and with an elderly grandmother on top of that. She thinks she can do everything so easily. Was I wasting my time with her father for so many years? The bank is almost in my hands. Because my father-in-law has one foot in the grave, he won't bother me at all. You will wash yourself with your tears, Katyushenka." Katerina decided not to tell Varvara Sergeyevna anything about the unpleasant conversation for now. First, she needed to identify the boy for treatment, and they went to the clinic. As it turned out, just in time. Vasya had advanced bronchitis, a little more, and it would have progressed to pneumonia. The boy was hospitalized. His grandmother stayed with him. Katya bought them everything they needed, hugged Vasya and the old woman. Everything will be fine. The doctors here are very professional and will definitely cure you. And you will take a break from hard homework and come to your senses. I'll come running tomorrow, but now I need to go home and have a serious talk with my husband. Varvara Sergeyevna lamented. Forgive me, Katya. It turns out that because of me and Vasya your family is falling apart. But I have nothing to do with it, you understand? Katya sighed deeply and replied. You really have nothing to do with this. It's not your fault that my husband is such a scoundrel. It turns out that I lived with a selfish liar for so many years, and I didn't want to notice anything. Everything will be fine. Now I'm here and I won't leave you. She carefully kissed the boy on the cheek and went to her house. She wanted to take a shower, change her clothes and deal with Talik, to talk frankly. But to his surprise, the key didn't want to go into the lock. She looked closer and realized that her husband had managed to change the locks. The woman ran to call him on his cell phone, but he deliberately didn't answer. There was only one way out, the intercom. Katya went out through the entrance and dialed the apartment code. Surprisingly, the husband replied, I know it's you, Katya. Don't try to break down the door. I won't let you get in with someone else's backbreaker. Come to your senses and take the boy home to the village. And let's forget it all like a nightmare. I will never accept this. To remember and think about it. Is this stranger's son worth all the problems that await him? Katya was indignant and shouted, You don't know everything. This is your own son. You had a relationship with Alla Konovalova, right? So you got her pregnant and she died during childbirth. And now his grandmother is raising him alone. Vasya is your son. You are really such a vile person that you will not change your decision even now. Talik sank. Everything was true, both about Alla and about her pregnancy. But he didn't know that she was no longer alive. And he doesn't need this son. But the man changed his tone. I still felt ashamed. Listen, Katya. I opened the door. Let's talk calmly. It was a temporary affair. That girl meant nothing in my life, and I didn't ask her to give birth. I kindly gave her money to have an abortion. That's why I don't want anything to do with that child. This doesn't change anything, understand? Why do you need this? Absolutely every woman in his position would hate this boy. After all, he is his lover's, in fact. Why do you want to put this yoke on yourself? Life is boring for you and Dad is dying anyway. Do not be stupid. Take the boy back and come back, and everything will be as before. Katya gasped at such impudence and shouted, What a brute you are, Talik. It's you I hate, not this poor boy and his dead mother. Get out of my apartment, otherwise I'll go with the police and break down the door. We are getting divorced and it is final. I give you 1 day so that your spirit will not be here tomorrow. Lord, what a man I lived with. Not a drop of remorse, not a drop of pity. It just doesn't fit in my head. She went to the car. She had no strength at all. She wanted to howl and scream. How blind she was, how she didn't notice anything. What a gullible fool she was. Katya wiped her tears, took a sip of water and exhaled. She whispered, You need to pull yourself together and go see your father. Only he can understand me like no one else. The woman went to the hospital. Her head was in complete confusion. Her thoughts were confused. How to live longer. Her whole family world collapsed and she trampled on the ruins, not knowing where to start a new life, without Talik. The doctor surprised Katya and said that her father had gotten worse, more heart and kidney problems, and he was transferred to intensive care. The woman gasped and ran towards it. They didn't want to let her in, but she knew how to be convincing when necessary. I entered the room. My father looked so helpless. There were tubes sticking out everywhere and sensors were making noise. His eyes were closed. The woman sat next to him, stroked his head, his cheek, and whispered, "Daddy, Daddy, what are you doing? Like this? Looks like you were feeling a little better when I left. Everything will be fine. You will definitely get better. I love you so much. Fight. Please don't give up." The man opened his eyes, saw his daughter, and smiled slightly, barely squeezing his hoarse voice. I waited so long for you, daughter. I was afraid of dying and not saying the most important thing. I love you too, sweetheart. Apparently it's time for me to leave. Soon I'll see my Ladaka. She's waiting for me there, I know. And be strong. You and Talik will take care of everything together, I'm sure. Just don't delay with your grandchildren, it's a shame. I probably won't see them again. Katia seemed delirious, kissed her father's hands and whispered, No, Daddy. You don't know anything. I'm divorcing my husband, and I want to adopt the baby. This is his son, which he, like the last bastard, abandoned. The baby is completely alone and no one needs him. I never thought that Talik was such a terrible, two-faced person, that he was capable of lying and betraying me like that. How this hurts me, Daddy. I need you. I believe you will improve. I can't lose you. Vladimir Ivanovich spoke in alarm. Oh, there it is. Well, my son-in-law surprised me, of course. Tomorrow I'm going to call a notary here and make a will where I'll leave everything just to you. As for the child, you decide for yourself, listen to your heart. I'm sure you will do the right thing. It's okay, daughter. We're still going to fight, since things are like this. Don't be discouraged. Go to my mansion and relax. And I'm going to take a nap too. I just want to sleep all the time. Katia left the hospital with the hope that Dad will now definitely get better. He, as always, will not abandon her. He will support her and everything will work out. But his hopes were not destined to come true. In the morning, she received a call from the hospital and was told that her father had died that night. This terrible, irreparable pain literally overwhelmed the woman, pushing everything else into the background. She, as in a dream, organized funerals and wakes, listened to condolences, and looked for everything with Talik's eyes. But her husband never attended his father-in-law's funeral, although she still informed him about it. After all, after so many years of life, it was to her father that her husband owed his career. Katia did not forget Varvara Sergeevna and Vazhya, visited them in the hospital and, after discharge, transported them to her father's mansion, persuading them to stay a little longer. A lot had fallen on her at once, and she still couldn't make any decisions. Her head couldn't think of anything. It felt like it was made of cotton. It took Katia almost a month to come to her senses at least a little. Her grandmother comforted her as best she could, and Vazhya did not let her get bored. The woman became very attached to the baby, and it was her care for him that prevented her from becoming discouraged and distracted her from bad thoughts. Finally recovering a little from the pain, Katia decided it was time to take action, divorce her husband and present documents to adopt Vazhya. There were no problems with the last question. The boy's father had an indent in his spine, his mother passed away, and his grandmother, due to her age, could no longer be his guardian. Katia had her own home and job, and her adoption was quickly approved. But there were difficulties with the divorce. It turns out that the enterprising husband wasted no time and completely emptied the bank, transferring all the money to his accounts abroad, and the money from the joint account also disappeared without a trace. In fact, after a difficult divorce, Katia was left with just a mansion, an apartment, and her modest business, the only source of income. Talik shamelessly appropriated everything else, hiring a cunning lawyer. After the death of her father, it was unbearably painful for Katia to be in his house. Literally everything reminded her of her loved one, and she cried, unable to cope with herself. and she lived in the apartment for so many years with a scoundrel husband. The memories are not pleasant either. The woman was torn apart. There was no peace for her soul. And then the wise grandmother Varia suggested, Katyusha, listen to the old woman. I see how poor you are working. Only your eyes remain on your face, and I won't have a life in this city either. My soul is not in the right place. I have chickens there, my goat remains, and my dog Zuchka. I told Grishka to keep an eye on me, but my heart longs to go home. Have you returned to our village? The house that my grandson and I have, despite being small, is solid and fits everything. You see, we have a forest, nature. In the summer there are berries and mushrooms. Nature itself will heal you, heal your soul. You will live there for a while, and then decide what to do next. Yes, and Vajja loves to run around the yard and chase girls. It's free with us. It's good. Katya grabbed this offer like a saving straw and decided to move. At first, everyone was twisting their fingers at her temple, especially at the clinic. They considered Katya blessed. It's not stupid to divorce your banker husband, leave your luxurious mansion and move to live in the desert, and even adopt a child who was spoiled by your husband. But the woman paid no attention to this gossip. His soul torn apart by pain demanded peace and change. She switched to remote work and now did paperwork at the clinic. After all, you don't meet village people every day, and Vajja needs supervision. The boy was smart and agile. Just follow him. At first, life in the village seemed unbearably difficult for Katya, and when she saw the bathroom in the yard, she almost fainted. The woman had no idea that these things still existed, or an old wash basin with a rod-shaped valve, and don't forget to take out the bucket. While she dominated the stove, the three of them almost got burned. It turns out that this topic has its own wisdom. Baba Varia was patient and taught Katerina everything. As if she were the same age as Vajja, she often came to them and just laughed. He could not believe that the city's FIFA would be able to survive in the village. I thought he would run away in a month. In fact, he really liked Katya. Yet, on a deserted road at night, he fell in love with her right away. I understood that they were very different. He was a simple village tractor driver, and she was the daughter of a bank owner, and there was a difference in age. The guy was 5 years younger than Katya. Therefore, he was in no hurry to confess, but tried to sweeten the pill, took her to the forest, to the river, messed with Vasco, and so, little by little, they became closer. They talked a lot, and the woman saw in Grisha not just a guy. It turned out that he had a steel core inside him. He supported his native village with all his heart and entered into a serious confrontation with the local farmer, Leonid Filatov. By hook or by crook, he tried to persuade his fellow villagers to sell their land for development. He described what cottages would be like in the future, the benefits of civilization and many tourists. And he sang songs about how comfortable apartments would be offered to the villagers. Katya didn't understand. Well, that's good. There are many elderly people in the village. It would be easier for them to live in an apartment. Why are you against it? Grisha waved his hands and said passionately, How come you don't understand? These are protected lands. Nature is untouched, but now all that remains is to dig up everything here and fill it with asphalt. So what? There will be your concrete jungle. People come to our herbalist from all over. Many say that even the air here is healing. You can't screw it up here. How long did Grandma Varia last in the city? Was she happy there? Yes. The only reason the elderly are alive is because they are on their own land, roaming the house and garden, but uprooting them? Will they take root in a foreign land? But Filatov is still an animal. He wants to deceive the old people, buy land for almost nothing, and then resell it to the buyer at exorbitant prices, but he doesn't care at all about the fate of the residents. And I intend to fight. I will go to the end. I'm going to make so much noise and attract the press. Don't you have friends like that in town? I'm sure Filatov will be scared and change his mind. Katia thought about the guy's words and replied, "But you're right. I came here sick. I couldn't recover from my husband's betrayal and divorce. My father's death finally finished me off. And here I myself didn't notice how little by little I felt better. The dark thoughts went away. The melancholy eating stopped. I want to live again. I'll help you. Call a journalist. He's a lover of all kinds of sensations and goes through other people's underwear. Let's make Filatov famous." Katia and Grisha did their best. The camera crew seriously scared the farmer with their report, and he promised that he would stop buying land and campaigning in exchange for this video not being aired. Grisha was pleased. They shook hands and went their separate ways. But a week later, the tractor driver disappeared without a trace. He didn't go to work and wasn't home. Grandma Varvara and Katia were the first to sound the alarm. The whole village was looking for Grishka, but it was as if he had disappeared into the earth. They broke the lock on his house. All his things were there, even the soup on the stove, which means the guy had no intention of leaving anywhere. Katia was anxious deep down. She was so attached to the guy. She saw how he looked at her. She understood that the poor guy had fallen in love with her, but she was afraid to open up and admit to herself that she also liked him. And only now, when Grisha disappeared, she realized how much she missed him, how worried she was and how much she missed him. The little son also kept asking when Uncle Grisha would arrive, and the grandmother cried softly, suspecting that something was wrong. But after a few weeks, bad rumors spread throughout the village. A worn-out neighbor, Serafima, ran to their house and shouted, "Katerina, Varvara, did you hear what happened? There is a ghost in our village. Look, do you see the smoke coming out like a rocking chair? Black is black. So this ghost is taking revenge on Filatov for Grishka's death. Ruins your technique. The second harvester is already on fire. Ah, priests, what is happening?" Grandma Varia crossed herself and spat 3 times over her left shoulder, driving away the evil spirits, and began to shake her head and cry. Did the goblin really return from the swamps? Holy, holy. About 30 years ago, you remember, Seraphim, one after another mushroom pickers got lost and drowned in the swamp. And then nothing. It calmed down and here it is again. It's him. There's no one else, I'm sure. The neighbors wondered for a long time who it could be, but Katia had her own opinion. But she decided not to express it yet. She, of course, did not believe in any evil, but a faint ray of hope settled in her soul. What if Grisha is taking revenge like that? What if he is alive, perhaps hiding in the forest? Well, he couldn't disappear like that. He himself has hinted more than once that he would like to have a family and loves Vasenka. We need to find him, but I don't know the area, where to go. As the late father said, the heart will tell you. As a precaution, Katia first went with her suspicions to the hunter, Stepanik. She didn't worry. She put everything as it was and began to beg. "Help me find Grisha." "Well, I don't believe he could leave like that or die in the swamp." "Well, why? He loved life so much. These are all Filatov's tricks, I'm sure. I wanted to go into the forest myself, but I'm afraid. I don't know the paths. I'll get lost." The hunter shook his head. "You're right, daughter. Grishka couldn't leave. He loved our village with all his heart. Let's go for a walk in one place. There is a remote temporary hut in the woods. Sometimes I spend the night there when I feed the elk. Few people know about this, but it is quite possible to live there for some time. There are matches, cookies, food, and a spring nearby. If Grishka is alive, then he just has to be there. Otherwise the animals would have killed him long ago." The hunter took a weapon, a backpack with food, and set off. Katia, out of habit, lagged far behind. Her legs were buzzing. The branches scratched her hands, but she did not become limp and did not complain. She tried to keep up with the gloomy and elderly Stepanik. She had one goal, to find Grisha. The hunter was right. The guy was hiding in his temporary cabin. Katya looked at the poor guy and gasped. His whole body was covered with abrasions, bruises, and mosquito bites. His leg was very swollen. He was thin and did not look like himself. Grisha was surprised to see the guests and said, "Stepanik, how did you guess I was alive? Why do I live in the forest? And I definitely didn't expect to see you here, Katya. Please note that I will not return to the village until I take revenge on Filatov." The hunter laughed. "Yes, it's not me. It was your love that begged me to find you. I figured you were the one ruining the farmer's equipment. Well, of course you put on a show. The residents are now afraid to go out at night. They think it's the swamp devil who is smoking. Don't be stupid, Grishka. Let's go home. I played as Cossack thieves, and that was enough. Otherwise, you will earn a sentence. Sooner or later, the secret will be revealed. You will have to answer for everything." The guy exploded and got excited. "Do you know, Stepanik, that this scoundrel and his accomplices beat me to death and buried me alive in the forest? He thought I was dead. I myself don't know how I survived and got out of the hole. I'll be back. So what? He won't leave me alone. Come on. He's going to torture Katya too, because she helped me. She invited these reporters. No, I will take revenge on him as long as I live. You need to fight for your land." At that moment, Katya couldn't take it anymore and started to persuade the guy. "Grisha, come to your senses. This is not a solution. How long will you last here? Look, your leg burst. But what if the infection starts? Well, you're going to die here. Who's easier for? You need to go to the local police officer, let him call the police, invite the press again, because Filatov wanted to kill you. And this is no joke. Let them discover. After all, he is not a buyer, just an intermediary, but it is necessary to reach the people who are behind everything. Let's go home, please. You need to go to the hospital." The guy frowned and shook his head, and then Katya exploded and shouted, "Oh, well, come on, Stepanik. Let him sit here, you idiot." So I cried a lot. I couldn't find a place for myself. I spent days looking for him around the village with the men, but he doesn't care about me and Vazhya. Well, let's go then. And he also said he wants a family. Stepanik just laughed, and Grisha jumped on one leg, grabbed Katya by the hands and looked at her so attentively. "Are you really worried about me? So, do you love me at least a little? Kate, I've longed for you for a long time, but I was afraid to tell you how much I love you. I'll go with you, to the ends of the world." And he limped quickly, beaming with happiness. It took a long time to get back. We arrived almost dark. As soon as the connection appeared, Katya immediately called the local police officer and herself called the police with an emergency team. The guy was urgently hospitalized. He needed treatment. Already in the hospital, the beatings were removed, and the investigator recorded his statement, and Katya confirmed that Filatov shouted in front of everyone that he would kill them both. The investigation was in full swing. The press and television helped publicize it, and soon something interesting came to light. Katya was shocked to discover that the buyer was her ex-husband. He was very shaken. It turned out that he wanted to illegally acquire these protected lands and launder money. There were actually no apartments for the villagers. He would just fool people. Anatoly was investigated, faced a decent sentence, and his new business failed miserably, and Talik lost everything. And Filatov received this for beating and trying to kill a person. The villagers hated the greedy farmer. He always paid him poorly and forced him to work from morning to night, and he was literally kicked out of the village. Filatov had to urgently get out of danger. He had already suffered continuous losses lately. Grisha soon left the hospital and returned to the village. Now he never left Katya's side for a second, and she spat on all conventions and gossip and stopped hiding her feelings for the guy. The guy had the most serious intentions, and the couple soon applied to the village council, and Grisha adopted Vasenka and gave her his surname and patronymic. The woman sold her father's mansion in the city and used the proceeds to help Grisha realize his dream. The guy had long told Katya that he dreamed of opening his own flour mill and mini bakery in the village. After all, people have a lot of grain, and the store doesn't sell bread regularly. And so it will be a holiday for people, always fresh bread and profit for you. Katya also noticed that Grisha had golden hands when they started living in his house. Everything there was done with his hands, with love and with conscience. Therefore, she had no doubt that Grisha would succeed and began to actively help him in purchasing equipment. She knew a lot about it. It took almost a year to build and launch the product. They had to calculate everything down to the smallest detail, collect a bunch of documents, and go through hundreds of authorities. And finally, it started to bear fruit. Grisha didn't increase the price, so there was already a queue for bread at his bakery from dawn. It was very tasty and crunchy. Katya was surprised by Grisha's zeal. He looked like he could work for days. He was so absorbed in his favorite pastime. She managed to help him, and even managed the clinic's affairs, even purchasing an entire arsenal of medicines and the necessary equipment for the paramedic position at a favorable price. The villagers no longer gossiped about the age difference. They respected this couple very much, called them lovebirds, and were grateful that they were investing their soul and money in the development of their native village. Katya did not regret at all that she had listened to Grandma Varya and risked moving. Now she would never agree to live in a stuffy city again. The woman fell in love with this place with all her soul. Here you think differently and breathe easier. Everything is imbued with kindness. The land itself is generously shared with everyone who loves it and wants to work on it. Now Katya admired the picturesque landscape. Green meadows, a river with babbling water, and herbs with an intoxicating smell. Where can you find this in the city? And as it was cozy and warm to have dinner together in the kitchen on winter evenings, Grandma Varya even seemed to get younger and stopped bending over on the floor. She was now calm with her grandson. Because he had good and loving parents, the boy had already started first grade. Time flies quickly. The old woman loved to warm herself by the stove and knitted long scarves and socks, smiling and muttering something to herself on the tray. Vajya has long called Katya his mother and Grisha his father. He decided this himself, although his parents did not lie to him that he was their own son. From the very beginning they told everything as it is. After all, in the village you cannot hide your sewing in your bag. The boy loved his mother very much. He clung to her, obeyed her, helped his father in everything. But he knew where the other mother, who gave birth to him, was buried in the cemetery. Together with his parents, he took care of her grave. But one day an event occurred that disturbed the Kalinin family. Grisha was grinding flour, Katya was making dough, Vajya and grandmother were feeding the cubs, when suddenly there was a loud knock on the gate. Katerina came out to the threshold and gasped. Talik was standing there. He was unrecognizable. He had gained a lot of weight. He became moody and unkempt, and dark circles appeared under his eyes. She exclaimed,
Tolik?
"Why are you here? How did you know where I live?" The man smiled evilly. "Well, how can you not know? This story with Filatov crossed out my whole life. Because of that, I served time and lost everything. I recently left and I want to see my own son. Vajya, come here. I came for you. I'm your briefcase, baby." The boy got scared and ran to Grisha at the flour mill and began to cry. "Daddy, an evil uncle came there and said he was going to take me away, and that he is my father." Grisha clenched his fists and pressed Vajya. "Don't cry, son, and don't be afraid of anything. Sit here, I'll be there soon." Katya tried to talk normally with her ex-husband. "Talik, come to your senses. Why do you need Vajya? You abandoned him before he was born. Go away. Don't scare the child. Don't ruin the boy's life." But Talik did not give up and shouted louder. "This is my son, and I have the right to see him. And I'll get it, you'll see." He looked at Katia's belly peeking out from under her sundress and joked, "I see you didn't waste any time. Does this mean you are attracted to young people? So this village simpleton also got you pregnant in your old age. It is not funny? Why do you need someone else's child? You'll soon have your own litter. But I have no one but Vasinka. You were in no hurry to give birth to children for me, but that's why I suffered." Katia was so offended that she wanted to tell the scoundrel everything, and then Grisha pushed her aside and whispered, "Sonny, take Vajya from the flour mill and go into the house, and I'll be here quickly. Come on, darling. You can't be nervous." Katia obeyed her husband and took the child away, but she was very worried and remained in the corridor listening to what was happening behind the gate. Grisha grabbed Talik by the collar, shook him hard and barked, "Listen to me carefully. Forget the road here once and for all. This is my family, my dear wife and my son according to all documents. And you, Vajya, are nobody. So get out, otherwise I'll crush my sides, and they won't send you to the intensive care unit. And remember, you are a complete idiot for having managed to lose a woman like Katia, but I love her more than life itself, and I won't let anyone get hurt. And Vajya is my son, and that's final. Leave, hurry up, or kick me to speed things up." Humiliated and ashamed, Talik turned away. Anger strangled him. He was no longer needed by anyone. He himself destroyed everything. After all, once upon a time I had everything that was possible. They lived happy ever after. And now a lonely, poor prisoner. Talik was angry with Katia, muttering under his breath, "She did it on purpose. She adopted my own son out of spite, to hurt me even more." And the boy was very afraid of his own father. Father considers Grishka. May they all fail. That's all my late father-in-law cursed me with before he died. I know. After his death, everything went wrong. The man bought 2 bottles of vodka at the store and went to the station, drinking straight from his throat without a snack. He got lost drunk and took the wrong path, straight into the forest, and no one else saw him. Locals said he had disappeared into the swamps, as if the devil had dragged him away. Unfortunately, Talik never realized that he was to blame for everything, because sooner or later you will have to pay for all your actions, such as life. Katia's pregnancy was difficult. The doctors scared her because she was at a critical age, but she did not give up and fought severe swelling and toxicosis. Grisha took great care of her, forbade her to lift weights, the coast. Grandmother Varya gave her special herbs, and in due time Katia gave birth to a daughter, Alenka. Happy Grisha took her out of the maternity ward with a huge bouquet of flowers and balloons, and the women in the ward waved and were jealous. Well, that's luck. So young, beautiful, hardworking, loves her very much. Another surprise awaited Katia in the village. There was already a tent in the yard, and a long table, benches. All the villagers were gathered there, and there were all kinds of delicacies on the table. They congratulated Katia, hugged the baby, wished her health. Grandmother Varya even raised her glass and made a toast. Katyushinka, dear, if you only knew how grateful I am to the Almighty that your car broke down near our village and that Grisha brought you to my house. It's as if you were a guardian angel that waved your wing and covered me and my grandson. Every night I pray for your health and ask the Lord only happiness for you. You deserve it, my dear. I feel so good with you, as if we were blood relatives. We live together with Grisha. I love my Vasinka. I raised my granddaughter." Everyone drank, cried. Katia hugged the old woman. She really looked like her own grandmother. It's even surprising. Grisha also decided to make a toast. "Well, let's drink to Elena Kalinina, a new resident of our village, and my daughter. Katyusha, dear, thank you for giving me a princess. My little boy. Vajya and I will take care of her and spoil her. Okay, son?" And I also want to thank all of you kind people for always helping with your kind words and advice. We are all one big friendly family here. This is what makes this village so great. Well, what about Alenka? Everyone supported and drank, began to play and communicate. Then grandfather Semyon brought an accordion and the women began to sing. Some even started dancing. Katya rocked the baby, admired his chubby cheeks and thought, how good! Probably. All my sorrows and troubles had to be endured in order to find such simple human happiness. Who would have told me before that I, the daughter of a bank director, would suddenly fall in love with the village? In fact, I would like to stay here forever. Well, it doesn't matter that in the clinic they call me the queen of the village and twirl their finger at my temple. And it doesn't matter what the age difference is between Grisha and me. Late Dad said it correctly. You need to listen to your heart. And now it's so easy for him. Which means I did everything right.